Ha ha! Hey guys, this is Gene Jensen. It is time for MTB Bass School. We're gonna catch some today. All right, so this is my Mystery Tackle Box Pro Box. This is the higher dollar one. For $25, you get about $40 worth of baits. And then the lower one is $15 a month. You get about $25 to $30 of baits. So pretty cool little deal. It's a subscription-based product. I'll leave all the links down in the description for you guys to go check them out. But open it up and talk about what's in it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tell you what's in it. I'm gonna kind of tell you the price of it. And then I'm gonna go and I'm gonna try to teach you everything I can about most of the lures in the box. So the first one is gonna be the Pro Series Louis pencil, or not pencil popper, but it says it's a pencil, but it's more of just a walking bait. Pretty cool. And it's worth $12.99. The next one is the Bomber Fat-Free Shad. This is a deep diver, which is kind of what they were hitting this morning. I don't know if I can catch a fish on one or not later this afternoon, but anyway, gonna tell you about a little bit about deep divers. That one's $6.99. The Reflex Buzzbait by Nichols Lures. This is a very good buzzbait. They make good buzzbaits. And I'm gonna do a little bit. I'm gonna show you how to modify it to make it catch more fish. And then the Vial Craw by Biospawn, my favorite crawfish bait. Caught my personal best on this. It is an absolute dynamite bait. I love to Texas rig it, and that's probably how we'll be fishing it. The Charlie's Worm Finesse Worms. Black straight tail worms. I like Charlie's worms. I was introduced to them a couple years ago down in Florida. Really like that. They're soft plastics. So $4.99 for the Finesse worms, $6.29 for the Vial Craws, and the Reflex baits was $7.99. And then the weighted swim bait hooks for $2.99. There's 3 of them in this pack. I might use these on the Finesse worms. I don't know. They're a little light for how deep the fish are, so it might take forever to catch them. And then Garlic Scent by Mystery Tackle Box. I probably won't be using that. And that's it. That's what I'm going to talk about today. We're going to go through each bait. We're going to give you all the details about it. And first of all, I'm going to tie them all on some rods. The first lure I'm going to talk about is my favorite craw bait, a Vial Craw. I've got this thing rigged on a swinging jig head, one that Strike King makes. I love this jig head because it comes through grass, comes through rocks. It hardly ever gets hung up, and it's just it's been a really good jig head for me, and it matches the Vial Craw kind of anyway. No big deal. I don't care about that. But so the first thing you do with the Vial Craw is you tear the little tabs that are on the appendages. Tear those. Pop the appendages loose, give it plenty of action. I've got it rigged on 15-pound test fluorocarbon. This is the new Fate Black Generation 2. It will be out in the fall. Really cool green color. It's gonna take me some getting used to. I like black. Then a Concept A reel, high speed, 8:1 gear ratio, so you can pick up the slack really quick and get a fish in really quick. And yeah, that's the setup. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about how to fish it, and we'll go from there. But one of the reasons I love a Vial Craw is because it is so versatile. Most soft plastics are really versatile. This one is especially versatile. Great pitch and flipping bait, great for punching. It's got that nice pointy head, punches through grass really easy. Got lots of action and kick on the way down. You can pull the appendages off and make it have whatever action you want. You can even pull both claws off and leave that little, let's see if I can show you. Leave this little thing dangling right here, and it just looks like a really cool, when you punch it through it, that little thing spins on the way down, and I don't know what it is, it triggers bites pretty good. But one of the things that really surprised people is you can put it on a slightly weighted swim bait hook or frog hook, and you can skim it across the surface like a topwater frog. It's got a little keel down on the bottom, so if you're in a pinch and you're fishing an area and like shallow grass or something like that, and you don't have a topwater horny toad or frog or anything like that, you can turn a Vial Craw into one. It really does work. I've actually caught fish doing it, so it's a pretty cool deal. All right, so what we're doing right here, let me show you. I've got a point that sticks out right here, and this is all one big flat. I'm actually only in about 5 feet of water, and this is all hard bottom shell bed. It's got a couple of other things going on with it, but I'm just gonna fan cast and drag this thing around. And like I said, the reason I like these swinging jig heads is that they come through just about anything. It's very difficult to get them hung up unless you set a hook into a log or something, which I did a minute ago and had to break off. But we're just casting it out, and I'm just gonna slowly drag it. Another thing about the Vial Craw that I love is you can swim it. So especially on something like a swinging jig head, Get it down to the bottom and then just slowly start to reel it until it's just off the bottom, about an inch off the bottom, and start to just tick and tick and tick. And then if they're in a mood to chase and to hit, that's a good way of catching them. My favorite color is a green pumpkin. This one's watermelon and red. And then the other favorite is, of course, the color I caught my personal best on, which was Vial Craw, which is green pumpkin with some orange on it. But you know, you can flip it, you can pitch it, or whatever. So that's a Vial Craw. Like I said, it's a soft plastic. It's versatile. You can do just about anything with it. I've even drop shot it and caught a fish. It's too slow to fall though, so I kind of don't like to do that. But good bait. All right, so I'm actually going to try to catch a fish on this Vial Craw. Just give me a minute. Boy, that bottom feels good. That's a good thing about a bottom baited, or something like a swinging head or a tungsten jig head or something like that. It transmits so much vibration up your line. That's why it's critical to have a nice sensitive rod. You can just feel everything, and I know that I'm on hard bottom. I know I'm in the sweet spot. Now, one thing that I have noticed over the years and years of fishing is that summertime, when the water temperature gets around 80 degrees and north of 80, typically crawfish patterns, you know, crawfish baits and stuff like that, that bite slows down. You can still catch them when you're flipping into heavy cover or flipping around, but as in covering water and dragging flats like this, I don't expect to get too many bites. If there's enough fish here, I might get a bite or two off of it, but definitely I'd prefer to go to something like a worm, a ribbon tail worm, something like a old monster, Zoom old monster, something like that, or to a straight tail worm like a trick worm, or actually Biospawn makes one of my favorite ones, which is the plasma tail. But a little 6.5 inch plasma tail is another really, really good worm for the summertime. I don't know what it is, but that's kind of what my observation is. All right, so what I'm doing right here is I just cast it right along a break line. There's a little drop right there, and I just start to drag it just a little bit. Little hop, little drag. Oh goodness, there's a fish right there. He was right at the boat. Goodness gracious, nice one. Really nice one, boy. It freaking hooked him good too. Jordan, you got one? Where'd you get the spinnerbait? Yeah, Jordan caught a spinnerbait. Nice little fish. He's pale. Now, when you look at a fish like this, see how pale he is? That means he's not in the grass. That means he's not been shallow. He's actually been deep and just moved shallow. So, pretty cool. Or he's in muddy water. There he goes. Good old Vial Craw. Does it again. So I quickly switched over to the Charlie's worm, Finesse worms. And I love a black worm. I don't care what the watercolor is. I don't care nothing. A black worm works. These are little straight tail finesse worms, a little bit longer than the Zoom finesse worms that I'm used to, or the Biospawn little plasma tail, little 4.5 inch plasma tails, or 4 inch, I don't know how long they are. But a little bit longer than that. And I put it on a drop shot. I've got about an 18 inch leader, a little drop shot weight, and I'm actually gonna cover water with it. This is a different way of fishing a drop shot. I know I've got a whole flat and a whole area here that doesn't have a whole lot of cover. The bass are just on it. And so if it has a little bit of grass, no big deal. This isn't going to get hung up. So I don't really worry about putting a different kind of hook on there. This is just your standard drop shot hook. You know, throw a little Palomar knot right here, run your tag line through the eye of the hook, and you got it. And another option is if you're fishing heavy cover or even thick grass, put a regular offset worm hook on here and Texas rig it. But still do the same way. Tie it on it, tie a Palomar knot, and run your tag line down through the eye of your hook and pull it tight. There it is. Drop shot. Let's talk about how I'm fishing it. I'm actually making long casts. And I probably am off my spot, but make long casts, let it sink down to the bottom. And I'm gonna fish it a lot like I would a Carolina rig. I'm just dragging that weight. And I'm shaking it, and I'm going to take my ever sweet time, especially when the fishing's tough, or if you are if you're fishing high pressure little ponds and lakes. A drop shot, maybe with a shorter leader. 18 inch leader is a little long for what I would fish really, really shallow lakes with. I'd, you know, cut it down to about 10 or 12 inches. But just cast it out, and you're just gonna fish it real slow. My setup today, I've got a medium light action rod. 15-pound test braid. This is Seagar Smackdown. And I've got this is the new Creed GT from 13. I want to say it's a 6:3-to-1 gear ratio. So it's a higher speed reel, real lightweight. The new Fate Black Gen 2 that's not out yet, it comes out sometime this fall, maybe even earlier than that. But now, and I've got a 6-pound fluorocarbon leader on here, tied with, somewhere is my FG knot right here. With a little FG knot, it's my favorite knot. And I've got a video on how to tie that. So make a good long cast out on the flat. And I'm just basically gonna shake the rod, keep your rod tip up at about 10 o'clock. And the trick is to keep your line at 90 degrees. That angle right there at your tip where your line going forward and your rod is gonna be about a 90-degree angle. You'll feel the most there and you'll have more control over the bait. But I'm gonna drag it and then drop it to a slightly slack line so your line is slightly bowed. And I'm just shaking it on that slack line. And what that does is it allows that worm to fall just a little bit. And then when you shake it, it just shakes that worm in place. Yes, I know I've got a knot in my line. That's what happens when you let your son use your spinning rod. Not that son, my other one. One of my other sons. And got a knot in it, but I just haven't taken it out yet. And I'm just dragging it a few inches and gonna stop and do it again. And like I said, when they're really, really high pressured, man, this is one of those things you can just soak in a whole area. You just gotta make it look as natural as you can. Use natural colored worms and just shake it. Drag it and shake it. Now, the only thing I'm not feeling right here that I was feeling right up there is a hard bottom. So I'm gonna have to make another cast a little further up there so I can find hard bottom again. So the way I've got it positioned right now is the boat is in 10 or 11 feet of water and I'm throwing up into about 3 feet. So I know somewhere between 3 feet and where I'm at, there's a drop. And I'm just dragging, shaking, dragging and shaking. Now the key when you get bit to this is let them take it for a second. Count 2, 3, 4 seconds. I just kind of drop my rod a little bit slack, let them take it. My boat's drifting. And then when you set the hook with an open hook, just reel into it. Start reeling, let that rod bow over towards the fish, and then just pull back a little bit. Let that real light wire hook get in there. So what I'm fishing right now is called a mosquito hook. It's my favorite drop shot hook. Mustad makes one. And they also make some other really good drop shot hooks, but that's the one I'm using. And it's really, really thin wire, real sharp, so you really don't have to set the hook hard. Now, if you Texas rig an offset worm hook, you actually do want to set the hook because it's got to drive that hook through the worm and into the bass. So you drop down and you lay back on it a little bit harder. Yep, there's a bite. See that? Feels like a bluegill though. See? Just had the end of the tail. You do this enough, you can tell what part of the freaking worm the fish has a hold of. It's definitely a bluegill. Oh, let me tell you guys a little bit about leader length. Right now I'm running about an 8 to 10 foot leader. The clearer the water, the longer the leader. And if I'm pitching like docks under, dark docks and things like that, I'm actually gonna go with a short leader, 2 feet, maybe 3 feet, because when you're fishing light line, problem is it gets wrapped around those docks and it breaks off real easy. So what you do is when you're fishing docks and you get bit, you set the hook and then you let the fish play itself out with the braid rubbing the dock line. If you've got too long of a leader, it's almost impossible to do. So I go to a short leader. Most of the time it's 6 to 8 feet, clear water up to 10 or 12 feet. And that's, another advantage to fishing the FG knot is that it can get, onto the spool of your spinning rod and not cause issues. All right, and that's the finesse worm. Old Charlie's Lures finesse worm. Now, there are lots of ways to rig this thing and rig any soft plastic, really. And I've got a playlist. I'll put a little link or a little card right up here, actually right up there, for you guys to go check that out and just check out all the different videos that I've got on how to rig soft plastics. And you'll be able to catch a lot more fish with these. All right, let's go to the next one. Hey, Jordan, what you doing up in that tree? Hey, there's a worm. There's a worm up in that tree, and it's shaking it. Got a limb shaker. Look at this. Okay, we got to go way up there to get to that one. Uh-huh.
I got it.
No, you don't. He says he got it. Now, when you do that, make sure you turn your eyes and your head away from it, because when it releases, there's only one way for it to go. It's straight back at you. That's my boy right there. He's trying to catch the squirrel fish. You need some help with that? All right, give me a second. Let me put mine up.
Squirrel fish.
How'd you get way up there?
I don't know.
And you wrapped it. Huh. All right, take your rod and go that way, and then hand me the line at the end of your rod. All right, now drop it over here so I can grab it. Are you done?
Yep.
All right.
Nice.
Now you see why I turned away?
Yep.
Some gun came straight back at me. You're gonna have to retie on that. Let's talk about a buzzbait. Any buzzbait, preferably one that does not have a painted blade, okay? This one's gonna take a little bit more doctoring than what I like to do. I like the silver blades, the aluminum ones, but with a painted blade, what you gotta do is you gotta straighten that. All right, so I had to get my little pair of pliers out to do this, but you straighten the wire out, pull off this little grommet. Hopefully I don't swallow it. And then you take your blade off. And what you want to do is you want to remove all the paint off of right here, just like that. Now I normally have a file at home that I do that with, a little metal file, but just remove it right off of that tab. And we want to kind of, oops, almost dropped my grommet out of my mouth. Flatten that tab at 90 degrees. Not quite so important that you do it right now, but you can do it once you get it back on the wire. Put it back on the wire. Take your grommet, put it back on there, and then let's twist this thing back down to keep everything together. All right, so there's that. That's the first thing you do. Then, next thing is you squeeze that grommet right there. See how I've got a hold of it like that? Squeeze it all the way back. Make sure it's back up against the back of this wire. And you want to pinch it down onto that wire. Man, I wish I'd have brought some heavier duty pliers, but these will work just fine. So where it doesn't spin, then you flatten it out a little bit. It's got a little bit of a curve to it. I don't like that curve. So I'm gonna try to flatten it out the best I can to where I get the most contact between that grommet and that little flange, or that little flat spot right there. And what it is, it's aluminum on aluminum, and that makes a really good squeak. And it's that squeal, man. I don't know what it is, but if you fish a buzzbait with a squeal on it, or an old buzzbait that you've worn in, you get that squeal going and you catch a lot more fish. That's the whole purpose of it. So that's how I modify one. Now I'm gonna fish this one a little bit, see if I can't catch fish. It's the wrong time of the day, everything else, but we're gonna at least talk about how to fish it. So another thing I'll do to break this thing in and really get it spinning and squealing good is I'll actually take some zip ties, or one zip tie, and I'll zip tie it to the radio antenna of my truck. If I'm going on a short little ride to the grocery store, a little 15-minute ride, zip tie it on there and let that wind, let that blade just spin, 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 and it'll wear it down to where you get a really good squeal. That's one of those tricks that make me look weird driving down the road with buzzbaits tied onto my onto my radio antenna, but it works. Okay, so my favorite rod, favorite action, length of action and power of rod to fish a buzzbait on is a medium fast action 7-foot or 7'1" baitcaster. 8 1-to-1 gear ratio reel, because sometimes you got to get that bait back and make another cast really, really fast. A lot of times you've got to reel a little bit faster than you thought to get the blades running just under the surface. 12-pound test fluorocarbon, it really doesn't matter with your line. Braided line is the only thing I would not use, because braided line does a couple of things. It wraps around the blade a lot because it's really limber. And the second thing it does is when you set that hook, it has a habit, because there is no stretch, there is no give in that line, you will pull that bait out of the fish's mouth before it has a chance to clamp down on it. So braided line I would not recommend, but a fluorocarbon definitely, maybe a monofilament or a copolymer is what I would do. Nothing less than 12-pound test though. So lots of times when you get a buzzbait right out of the box and you make a cast, it likes to go to the left or the right. And that all depends on the bend of the blades. Okay, so the blades are spinning one direction, they've got torque, and they torque the bait off to the side. The way that you sometimes can fix that is, let me get the rod out of my hand. You take it and you bend the blade one way or the other until you get a nice clean run. I'm not too concerned with it coming straight back to the boat, but I don't want it making left and right turns. But I'm just gonna tweak it just a little bit and just play with it until I get it right. But just by bending that blade over, that'll straighten it up. But having it go off to the left or the right is not a bad thing. A lot of times when they're around docks and I'm fishing a buzzbait, and that was the absolute wrong way to bend it. But anyway, a lot of times when they're around docks and I'm fishing a buzzbait, I will actually make it swim left, and then I'll get another one that has the opposite turn in the blade, and it'll spin, it'll go to the right, and I'll bump those dock pilings all the way back to the boat. All right, so now when is the best time to throw a buzzbait? Early in the morning, all the way over through the nighttime and in the summertime, and late at night, or anytime you got low light conditions like cloud cover and the fish are shallow and active. Top water is always best when the fish are shallow and active, except for like a lake I fished this last week where the spotted bass will come out of 30 and 40 feet of water to hit top water out in the middle of the lake, but that's an exception. But the way I like to work a buzzbait is you want to throw it as shallow as you can. A lot of times in the summertime, the bass will get way up on the banks, really shallow, and you just about have to throw it to the bank. So I throw it on the bank and I'll drag it off if there's nothing to snag on it. But the biggest thing is to get that thing turning as soon as it hits the water. And yes, I switch hands, which isn't a really good thing, but I switch hands really fast. So I'll actually switch before the bait hits the surface. Then get it going, but you don't want to buzz it really fast. You want to just barely get the blades ticking out of the surface, so you just barely get a buzz going. And work the bank. And if they're shallow and active, man, you can't beat it. My favorite time of the year to fish a buzzbait is going to be fall, when they're up feeding on that shad. My favorite trailer is either a grub. I'll actually take this skirt completely off, put a grub on, or put a horny toad, a white horny toad, to match the head. But the good thing about a buzz frog or any kind of a horny toad is it helps keep the bait up a little bit higher, so you can actually reel it a little bit slower. And I don't know what it is, man. It catches a lot of fish with a dang something other than just a regular spinnerbait skirt on there. That, really, honestly, that's all there is to a buzzbait. It's just, you know, cover a lot of water with it. Play with your colors of your buzzbait too. Sometimes they want black. I've caught them in the middle of the middle of the day, sunny days in the summertime on black buzzbaits. White buzzbaits, I prefer chrome or silver blades, but I'm not really that picky. I'm more concerned with the sound and how much commotion it's making. I like it to leave a bubble trail behind it. If that water is able to hold a bubble on top, I don't know what it is, but that tends to be what I call buzzbait water. You start throwing it around and you see bubbles coming, staying on the water after it's passed. That's usually when I catch fish. But and I call it buzzbait water because that's usually what I'm going to throw when I see it doing that. The next one is the Louis Pencil 98. It's like breaking into Fort Knox, trying to get this thing out of the box. And it is a walking bait. I've never seen one like it. But we'll tie it on and mess around with it and talk to you about walking the dog. You know, a walking bait is really good when the fish are schooling, when you see them coming up in the surface. Early in the morning when you're working it around cover, if you got a good accurate cast, you won't get hung up and stuff like that. But it's one of those things that I like to fish on certain lakes all day long, like blueback herring lakes, Clark Hill, or any lake that's got spotted bass in it. But they're a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Biggest thing is when the bass bites, make sure you count 1, 2, and then set the hook on 3. Give them a second to get a hold of it. The rod I like to throw is a couple of different rods, but my favorite rod, action and power, is a medium fast action rod. My next favorite would be a medium heavy moderate action rod, a long one. If you're gonna make long casts with it, I'd go with a medium heavy moderate. Loads up really good. Not fluorocarbon like this one has. I'd actually throw it on monofilament. If I had some 12-pound monofilament on a rod, that's what I'd be throwing it on. Either a 7-speed or an 8-speed reel, so a 7 3-to-1 or 7 1-to-1 or 8 1-to-1, something like that. Just because I like to pick up a lot of line. All right, so the thing that most people have trouble with is walking the dog. So you make a good long cast, think of it like you're tapping a drum. You don't take that drumstick and hit the drum and keep the drumstick on there. It's tap, 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 and every time you're tapping it, you're bringing that drumstick back up. Same thing with a rod. Every time you're tapping it, you're bringing that rod back to a slack line. So it's kind of like this. Let me see if I can back up and get you guys to see. Okay. I'm going tap, 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 tap. The shorter the bait, the shorter those taps need to be. If it's a really, really small bait like a frog or something like that, it'd have to be like this, tap, 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 tap. The longer the bait, the longer you have to make those rod movements. Of course, I've got braided or fluorocarbon on here. I want you guys to see, when you do fluorocarbon, that bait, it forces that bait to sink down under the surface and it no longer is a topwater. So that's why we don't use fluorocarbon. But same thing, make a good long cast. Tap, 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 tap. You can change, ooh, there was a strike. Did you see that, Jake? Ah! Did I get him? It ain't a big one. Smallmouth. And you catch a smallmouth on it. Look at that. Who'd have thought? I didn't even think I was gonna catch any fish today on this thing. But right up shallow, little bitty smallmouth. Awesome. No, it's too small. Sweet. And that's how you do it. Notice it missed the first time. The second time it bit. It took it under and I just waited and I set the hook. So, and then Jordan gets hung in the rocks. Nice. All right, last lure is a deep diving crankbait. This is the Bomber fat-free shad. It is a deep diver. I think these go 10 to 12 feet deep, so it's not super deep like I like. I like 16 to 20 feet in most places, at least when I'm throwing deep divers. But real quick, I'm gonna go over the rod, the reel, the line, everything. Most important thing is the rod. You need to have a rod with a lot of flex to be able to get these big baits back, load it up well, and make a really, really long cast. Plus, you get better hook sets with a limber rod. This is a 7-foot, 9-inch, medium heavy, moderate action rod. It is a crankbait rod. That's all I use it for, deep diving crankbaits. It's got a lot of flex, but it's a stiff flex. So you've got enough power behind it to set the hooks, everything else. That's the rod. The reel is going to be a 5-3-to-1 or a 6-6-to-1 gear ratio reel. Then fluorocarbon line, 12-pound test for heavy crankbaits. 10-pound test is a little too light. I might even go up to 15-pound if it's like those big 10XDs and 8XDs, things like that. And yeah, that's it. That's what I throw it on. Now, I'm going to do a real quick one on how to do this. Another reason for a long rod is you've got to make long casts with a crankbait. It takes a little while for a crankbait, a deep diving crankbait, to get down to depth. So with that in mind, you also got to understand the targets you're trying to hit are going to be halfway to the boat or closer. So if you're fishing, you need to hit, you got a 16 feet deep diving crankbait, and you need to hit something at 16 feet deep. 16 feet deep needs to be there, not way out there. Okay, so set up that way. You crank down to depth, and then as you start to hit the bottom or hit the cover, I slow way down. And as I bump something, I'll stop reeling, and I'll just keep on cranking. That's the key to a deep diving crankbait. What you're trying to make it look like is you're trying to make it look like a bait fish or a bluegill in this, because of this color. You know, you want to make it look like it's feeding on the bottom, so it's tap, 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 tap. So you're not moving very fast. That's why a 5.3 to 1 is a really good reel, because really it forces you to slow down, and plus it's got a lot more torque to be able to reel in these big bladed crankbaits. So long, super long cast. This is a Concept E. It's their high-end reel, first high-end reel I ever owned. But so it can cast a long ways, and I reel it down to depth. And this is a 6:6 to 1 gear ratio, and it's still taking a while to get it down there. You just slowly, look how slow I'm cranking. And you just want to feel it tap, 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 tap on the bottom. Bounce off of something, they stop it for a second. There's nothing down there for me to bounce off of, or I'd show it to you. But basically what I'm doing, I'm hoping with this wind it'll turn these fish on and actually catch one on this thing. The only problem is I don't think it's the right color. Fishing this lake, and today with the watercolor being so clear, they want something that's a more natural color, not a fire tiger as this color is called. This is a classic color, really good for dingy water. Not so much today, but we're gonna still give it an old good try and see what happens. So another way of fishing a deep diving crankbait is to fish it really shallow. I'm sitting in 16 feet of water right now, but I'm throwing up into 5, and I'm just bouncing and just taking it straight down to the bottom. Keeps bottom contact longer, and the same thing, I'm making it look like a fish is feeding. And those bass, when you do that, and if the bass are sitting there and they want to bite it, they will slam that bait down into the bottom. And you get some of the weirdest hook sets. They'll be hooked in the bottom lip and around the gills and all kinds of crazy stuff. But man, it will cause a reaction strike from big fish. So looks like we are getting some rain. GoPros that are set up like mine don't like to be wet. So that is the basics of deep diving crankbaits. I've got lots of videos about all this stuff. I'll link to them down in the description so you guys can follow it. But that's the MTB Bass School for this month. Hope you enjoyed it. If you guys are interested in Mystery Tackle Box, you can use the coupon code, I think it's Fluke, F-L-U-K-E. I'll put it down at the bottom just in case I'm wrong. Let you look at the description, figure that out, and you can get your first $15 box for $4.99. So that's it. But like I always say, be sure to introduce somebody to fishing. Introduce them to my channel. Let me help you teach them how to fish. More importantly, get out of the water, go out and catch some fish. Have a great day.